The science, the statins, and the women that nobody told. The cholesterol lie that just won't shut up. Right, let me ask you something. When was the last time your doctor sat down with you and actually explained why your cholesterol number matters? Not just it's high or here's a pill, but they actually explain the mechanism, the biology, the evidence. I'm guessing never. And that's not a dig at your doctor. They're working with what they were taught. But what they were taught and what they've been teaching you for the last 70 years is built on foundations that are shakier than a badly made meringue. Today, I'm going to give you the most complete picture of cholesterol that you're going to find outside of a medical library. We're going to cover what cholesterol actually is and why your body is completely obsessed with it, where this whole cholesterol equals heart disease story came from, and who kept it alive when the evidence started falling apart, the statin story, including something that doesn't get nearly enough airtime. What the data actually says for women and what to do instead to genuinely protect your heart. This is the video I've been building towards for a while, and by the end of it I want you to be armed, not anxious, but armed. I'm Emma Voysey. I'm a health coach and I believe in real food, honest science, and asking the questions that most people in white coats seem oddly reluctant to ask. I'm based here in the rather spectacular Andorra, and I work with women and a few good men all over the world to help them get their health back using real food, real science, and none of the outdated nonsense that we've been fed for decades. So if you'd like to work with me one-to-one, my 6 months Sweet Enough program has a few spaces open, and there's a link down in the description below. But right now, let's talk cholesterol. Disclaimer, quick note before we start. This is education. It's not personalised medical advice. So if you're on medication, please keep your health professional in the loop. I'm not here to yank anyone's statins without context. I'm here to give you the context that you should have been given years ago so that you could have an intelligent, informed conversation with your doctor. Chapter 1, what cholesterol actually is and why your body loves it. Let's start at the very beginning, because the moment that you understand what cholesterol actually does in your body, the whole fear around it starts to look absolutely ridiculous. Cholesterol is not a toxin, it's not a poison, it's not a mistake that your stupid body made, because our bodies are so incredibly amazing and intelligent. Your body is the most amazing machine that you will ever own, and you get to live in it. So cholesterol, it's a nutrient, it's a structural molecule that your body makes deliberately on purpose every single day. In fact, your body is so keen on cholesterol that your liver manufactures around 80% of the cholesterol in your bloodstream, all by itself. Not from a steak you had for dinner last night, from scratch. Because it needs that much of it. Think of cholesterol as the body's master building material, like the steel and the mortar that's behind every wall in your house. You can't see it, but without it, the whole structure is going to collapse. So here's what cholesterol's actually doing in your body. Every single cell in your body, and we have trillions of them, needs cholesterol to hold its membrane together. Every one. So without it, the cell wall either goes rigid like a frozen pond or floppy like a popped balloon. Cholesterol keeps it perfectly flexible and functional. Cholesterol is the backbone of every sex hormone that your body makes. That's your testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all built from cholesterol. If you start aggressively lowering cholesterol in a woman over 40, interfering directly with her hormone production, then everyone starts wondering why she's feeling terrible, why she's cross all the time, maybe why she doesn't laugh as much as she used to, why she can't concentrate anymore. Plus, she can't sleep and her belly's getting fatter. All of that for messing around with her hormones. So cholesterol is how you make vitamin D. When sunlight hits your skin, it's actually cholesterol in that skin layer that gets converted into vitamin D. No cholesterol means no conversion. It's also essential for making bile acids, how you absorb your fat-soluble vitamins. A, D, E and K. So ironically, the low fat, low cholesterol advice, it was making people deficient at 2 levels simultaneously. Yay. And perhaps most importantly for this audience, your brain is 60% fat. 60%, worth repeating and knowing. Low cholesterol is linked in multiple studies to cognitive decline, depression, memory loss and increased dementia risk. That's not fringe research. That's in peer-reviewed journals. This is why I get genuinely frustrated when I hear that someone's been told to take a drug to lower this substance. It's like being told to drain the oil from your car or from your car engine because there seems to be a lot of it in there. You know, hey, where's the sense in that? Chapter 2, the origin story. How a theory became a religion. So how did we get here? How did something that your body makes deliberately and depends on completely become the villain of the piece, the villain of modern medicine? It starts in the 1950s America with a physiologist named Ansel Keys. And I want to be careful here to stick to what's actually documented because this story is dramatic enough without any embellishment necessary. So Ansel had a hypothesis. He had this hypothesis that fat, dietary fat, raised cholesterol and caused heart disease. And he was ambitious and he was charismatic and he was very, very determined to be right. So he collected data from 22 countries. Then he published a graph using only 6 of those countries, the 6 that supported his theory. The 16 countries whose data didn't fit, he quietly set those aside. So the countries like France, Switzerland, Norway, high-fat diets, low heart disease rates, they simply weren't in the picture that he was presenting to the world. Now, to be fair to Keys, and this has been debated at length, some researchers have defended him, but what isn't debated is that the data from those other countries, the ones that existed but he didn't use, it contradicted his conclusions. And there were a lot more countries in the set of data that he didn't use, 16 of them compared to the 6 that he chose. So the conclusion that Ansel promoted, that saturated fat causes heart disease by raising cholesterol, became the most influential nutritional hypothesis of the 20th century. Ansel Keys landed on the cover of Time magazine in 1961. The American Heart Association endorsed his theory. The dietary guidelines followed. And an entire generation from my 1970s childhood onwards was told to swap butter for margarine, stop eating eggs and fear the yolk. Here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The Framingham Heart Study is one of the most famous long-term studies in medical history. It was supposed to prove the cholesterol theory once and for all. But William Castelli, who was the director of that very study, wrote in 1992, after more than 40 years of data, and I'm paraphrasing closely here, that in Framingham, the more saturated fat people ate, the more cholesterol they ate, the more calories they ate, the lower their serum cholesterol turned out to be. Funny that. So the man running the most famous cholesterol study in the world essentially wrote in a scientific journal that his own data contradicted the theory. That's not from a conspiracy website. That's from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And yet, the guidelines didn't change. The targets instead kept being reduced. Further, the industry that had grown up around the theory had too much invested in it to stop. Chapter 3, LDL, HDL, and why good and bad is nonsense. Right, so let's talk about the letters, because most people have had LDL and HDL explained to them in a way that's about as useful as telling a child that cars are either red and friendly or black and evil. LDL and HDL are not cholesterol. That's the first thing. They are lipoproteins, tiny protein-coated particles that carry cholesterol and fats through your bloodstream, like little delivery trucks. Because fat and water don't mix, we all know that, your body needs these little vehicles to transport the goods around. LDL is your delivery lorry. It carries cholesterol and fats out of the liver to your tissues, your cells, your muscles, your brain, your adrenal glands, everywhere that needs building materials and energy. And HDL is the returns lorry. It picks up excess cholesterol from tissues and brings it back to the liver for recycling. Neither of them is inherently good or bad. The important question is never how many lorries are there. The important question is what state is the cargo in? Because when LDL particles are oxidised, when the cargo's gone rotten, in other words, that's when they start to cause problems. And what causes oxidation? Unstable fats, particularly industrial seed oils, which I've covered in detail in previous videos. Chronic high blood sugar, smoking, chronic stress, poor sleep. These are all things that will damage the cargo. So when your doctor looks at your LDL number and reaches for his prescription pad, ask this question: has anyone measured whether my LDL particles are oxidised, doctor? Has anyone looked at my triglycerides, my fasting insulin, my inflammation markers? Because if your triglycerides are low and your HDL is high and your fasting insulin is healthy, a higher LDL number in isolation tells you very little. There's also something called ApoB testing and LDL particle size, which gets much closer to the real picture. So ask your doctor about those. If they don't know what you're talking about, find a more curious doctor. Chapter 4. What actually damages your arteries? So, if cholesterol isn't the arsonist, what is? Think of the inside of your arteries as having just one single cell wall thickness of a layer called the endothelium. It's extraordinarily thin and extraordinarily important. When it gets damaged, scratched, inflamed, irritated repeatedly over time, it sends your body cholesterol to patch it up, like a repair crew arriving at the scene. And then someone looks at the repair crew and says, it's them. There they are, they're the ones who caused the damage. The firefighter analogy again, cholesterol is always at the scene because it was sent there to help. That doesn't make it the arsonist. So what is actually damaging that delicate endothelial lining, that delicate one cell thickness layer? Excess blood sugar and refined carbohydrates, which physically damage your blood vessels through a process called glycation. Industrial seed oils, sunflower, safflower, rapeseed, cottonseed, corn oil, soybean, and so on, which are highly unstable and they're oxidized really easily and they cause inflammation in your arterial walls. And chronic stress, which keeps cortisol elevated and directly inflames the vascular system, aka your veins. Smoking, poor sleep, that again, and visceral fat stored around your organs, which pumps out inflammatory compounds continuously. The most exciting development in this space is the coronary artery calcium score, or CAC score. This measures actual calcified plaque in your coronary arteries. It measures what's actually happening in the tissues, not a proxy number in your blood. And research now shows that it predicts cardiovascular events far more accurately than total cholesterol numbers ever did. So ask your doctor for one. Some will look at you blankly. Some will tell you, no, you cannot have that test, and others will be delighted to know that you've even asked. Hi. Those are the doctors that you need to hang on to. Chapter 5, the statin story. What they don't put in the leaflet. This is the part that makes me genuinely angry on behalf of my clients. Not angry at doctors, because most doctors are doing their best with the information that they have, but angry at a system that let a drug become the most commercially profitable pharmaceutical product on the planet before the evidence was anywhere near clear enough to justify that. Statins work by blocking an enzyme in the liver called HMG-CoA reductase. That enzyme's job is to produce cholesterol, block it, and cholesterol production stops or drops right down. Number goes down, job done. Except, and here's what they don't tell you, that same enzyme also produces something called coenzyme Q10, or you might have heard of it as CoQ10. It's not just a trendy supplement, it's a critical molecule that sits inside your mitochondria, those energy producing engines inside nearly every cell in your body, and it is essential for generating the energy that your cells run on. That's your heart muscle, which never gets a day or even a moment off. It's one of the biggest users of CoQ10 in the body. And when you block HMG-CoA reductase to lower your cholesterol, you also block CoQ10 production. So multiple studies confirm that statin use significantly reduces CoQ10 levels in blood and muscle tissue. The most commonly reported side effects of statins: muscle pain, fatigue, exercise intolerance, joint problems. They're consistent with CoQ10 depletion. This is not controversial science, it's just not on the leaflet. Interestingly, some European countries, CoQ10 supplementation is routinely suggested alongside statin use. In the UK and the US generally, it's never even mentioned. Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you just not take the statins? Then there's the cognitive side. Statins cross your blood-brain barrier. The brain depends on cholesterol. There are documented cases of memory loss, of confusion and mood changes associated with statin use. Well enough established that the FDA added a cognitive warning label in 2012, 16 years ago. And there's a significantly increased risk of type 2 diabetes with statin use, which is particularly ironic given that insulin resistance is one of the actual drivers of heart disease. The women's story. Now, this is the part of the statin story I really want you to pay attention to, especially if you're a woman, because this one genuinely astonishes me every time I say it out loud. Hi, horses. The major statin trials that established that statins saved lives, that narrative, were conducted predominantly or entirely in middle-aged men. Women were largely excluded from these early clinical trials, ostensibly to protect them against potential side effects on pregnant women and to avoid the complicating factor of hormonal fluctuations, which sounds reasonable until you realise what happened next. The results from those male-dominated trials were then extrapolated to women. So same drugs, same dosing guidelines, same prescribing decisions based on evidence from a different sex, a different hormonal profile, and a fundamentally different cardiovascular risk landscape. Multiple independent meta-analyses have now found that in primary prevention, that means giving statins to women who have not already had a heart attack, statins do not significantly reduce all-cause mortality in women. Not a fringe finding, published in peer-reviewed cardiology journals, and yet millions of women over 40 are on these drugs right now, and you might be one of them. Dr. Rita Redberg, a cardiologist at the University of California in San Francisco, she put it bluntly: there are millions of women on a drug with no known benefit and risks that are detrimental to their lifestyle, and no one is talking about it. The most the data shows in women is a so-called reduction in soft endpoints, hospitalizations, revascularization procedures. The hard endpoints, heart attacks, strokes, death, show no statistically significant benefit for women in primary prevention. Meanwhile, women on statins show a higher rate of developing type 2 diabetes compared with men on the same drugs. And none of this was communicated when the prescription was handed over. Where's my dog gone? I want to be clear. I'm not saying no women should ever take a statin. If you've already had a heart attack, the picture's more nuanced and the conversation's different. What I'm saying is that you deserve that conversation, not a number, not a target, not a prescription, a conversation with all of this on the table. My own story: clean veins, extraordinary numbers, and a very bossy specialist. I want to tell you something that happened to me personally, because I think it illustrates everything we've just talked about better than any study that I could quote at you. So not long ago, my GP, my doctor here in Andorra, ran a routine blood panel. I wanted to know where I was at. And when the results came back, she was quite concerned. My total cholesterol, she told me, was very, very high, and she wanted to refer me for a carotid artery ultrasound. That's a scan of the arteries in your neck to check the level of plaque inside them. Because if there was plaque, the implication was clear: I would need to go on medication. Now, I want you to picture what I eat every single day. A largely ancestral diet, if you like, very low carb, plenty of protein, plenty of fat, eggs, meat, fish, butter, the works, everything that conventional advice says should be furring up my arteries at an alarming rate. I wasn't remotely worried, but I went along for the scan because I was genuinely curious to see what the actual data said. So the appointment took 2 months to come, 2 months during which time I changed absolutely nothing about how I eat and how I've been eating for about the last 3 years, not a single thing. So here are my actual results. From a real blood test, my own name here at the top of the page, my blood test results, November 2025, total cholesterol, 395 milligrams a decilitre, equivalent to 10.2, the way that cholesterol is measured in the UK. The reference, or what your doctor's looking for, is a number under 200 or under 5.2. My HDL, that's the recycling van, the one that clears the cholesterol away from your artery walls and takes it all back to the liver. That was 154. Or 4.0 in UK numbers. So anything above 60 is where the studies show it starts actively protecting you against heart disease. Mine was 2.5 times that, which rather explains the clean arteries. Triglycerides, 86 milligrams a decilitre, or 0.97 in UK numbers. The reference is under 150 or under 1.7. Fasting glucose, 75. The reference range is 74 to 110. Well, I walked down to the medical centre to have my bloods drawn, which accounted for my slightly elevated blood glucose, because normally in the morning when I wake up, before I've eaten my breakfast, I would expect to see it around 65. Now, the total cholesterol of 395, that is the number that had my GP reaching for the referral pad. And yes, on paper, against the lab's reference range, it looks alarming. I completely understand why it alarmed her, but look at the rest of that picture. My HDL, the recycling van, the one that clears cholesterol away, was 154. Anything above 60 is considered protective, as in it's protecting you against heart disease. So a high number there, really good. Mine was 2.5 times that. It is frankly extraordinary. My triglycerides were 86, well within the healthy range and actually very low. Low triglycerides combined with high HDL is one of the strongest positive cardiovascular markers that there is. My fasting glucose was perfect, sitting right in the middle of the normal range, no insulin resistance signal whatsoever. Kidneys, liver, uric acid, all completely normal. The only numbers circled in concern were the cholesterol and the LDL, but the LDL figures actually calculated mathematically from the other numbers rather than being measured directly. So when your other markers look like mine do, that calculation needs to be interpreted very differently, a fact that was not mentioned. And my HDL to total cholesterol ratio, for those who know how to look at it, outstanding. My triglycerides to HDL ratio, another strong cardiovascular predictor, was less than 1.0, which is about as good as it gets. So 2 months after those results, I went for a carotid artery ultrasound. The specialist, Dr. David, he gravely looked at my numbers, nodded and observed, yes, your cholesterol is very, very high. If we find plaque in these arteries today, you will have to take the pills. I had questions. He wasn't particularly interested in my questions. He was very interested in the pills. And I want to say, he was very convincing. He was authoritative. He spoke with complete certainty. He was not a man who expected to be questioned. Then he did the scan. On the screen, I could see my carotid arteries in real time. I wish I'd taken a picture, actually. They were absolutely black, not slightly clear, not mostly clear, jet black. No plaque, no debris, no narrowing, nothing. Just beautifully clean, open arteries, exactly what they're supposed to look like. He looked at the screen, he looked back at me, and he said, and I won't ever forget this, "Oh, you have the cleanest veins I have ever seen. You don't need to come back for 10 years. 10 years. And then he looked back at my numbers. This is the woman with the 395 cholesterol, eating eggs, butter, steak every day, cleanest veins he'd ever seen. He looked back at his numbers, sent through from my doctor's notes, saw that cholesterol number again, and immediately revised his position. Your cholesterol is still very, very, very high. He said it 3 times. You must come back in 1 year. I asked about my HDL, my triglycerides, my ratios. You don't want to worry about that, he said. I pointed out that the threshold for what counts as high cholesterol has been revised downward repeatedly over the last few decades, and that the more people who qualify for statins, the more statins that get prescribed, and statins happen to be one of the most commercially profitable drugs ever manufactured. He sat back in his chair. He looked genuinely horrified, and he said in the most indignant voice, "I may point out to you that whether you take the pills or you don't take the pills, I do not make any more money." And I said, "No, I know you don't, but somebody does." He didn't have an answer for that. He just repeated his line, "Come back in a year. If there's plaque, you will have to take the pills." It wasn't a choice. I was being told. And here's the thing. I completely understand why most people in that room would have walked out with the prescription. This man knew his stuff. He was direct, he was certain, he was authoritative in the way that doctors can be, when they have absolutely no doubt that they're right and you're wrong. And he genuinely believed he was giving me the best possible advice. He wasn't lying to me. He wasn't trying to harm me. Of course he wasn't. He was doing exactly what his decades of experience and his training had told him to do. And when someone with that kind of authority, a specialist in a medical setting with your scan results in his hand, tells you that you have very, very, very high cholesterol and that without that medication, you are at risk of a heart attack, I completely get it. I understand why people nod and take the pills. Fear is a powerful thing, and these are not small decisions. What I'm trying to do with this video, with everything I make, with my channel, is give you the other side of that picture. Not to tell you what to decide, but to make sure that you have all the information you need for yourself. Oh, it's very bright out here. You can make a decision based on knowledge, because your body deserves better than a single number and a prescription pad. My arteries were the cleanest that specialist had ever seen. My HDL was extraordinary, my triglycerides were low, my glucose was perfect, and the tissue, the actual tissue inside my actual arteries, was completely clear. The number told one story, my body told another. I'm very glad I knew enough to listen to my body. And I'm glad I went for that scan, because going through that whole process, it helped me to understand better why, when there's so much evidence against them, so many awful side effects, so much scientific proof that statins are bad for you, people still take the pills. The low cholesterol risk nobody mentions. Here's a question that's almost never being asked. It never gets asked. What happens when cholesterol goes too low? Your body doesn't have a lower is always better setting. It has a homeostasis setting, a balance range within which everything functions well. Across multiple long-term studies, very low cholesterol is associated with increased overall mortality in certain groups, higher rates of infection and sepsis, cognitive decline, increased cancer incidence, and in some analyses, and in women particularly, poor hormonal outcomes and mood disorders. The targets for healthy cholesterol have been revised downwards multiple times over the decades. Each time the target comes down, more people qualify for medication. You might want to ask yourself, who benefits from that? And it's not a rhetorical question. Follow the money. Lipitor. It's one statin. It generated over $12 billion in a single year at its peak. And it's in a category of the most commercially profitable pharmaceutical products ever created. And the more the target comes down, the more that people are prescribed statins. And once you're on them, you tend to stay on them. That's not conspiracy theory. It's just a business model. And when a business model and your health interests align, brilliant. When they diverge, you need to know whose interests are actually being prioritized here. Chapter 7. Hello, lovely. Practical steps, what you can actually do instead, what actually works. Right, enough of the what's wrong with the current system. Let's talk instead about what you actually need to do. So the goal is not to lower a number. The goal is to reduce actual biological processes that damage your arteries and your heart. what the evidence actually supports. Number one, remove the primary source of oxidative damage. Ditch the industrial seed oils, that's your sunflower, safflower, rapeseed, corn, soybean, cottonseed, grapeseed, they're all out. Don't eat those oils, they are just chemical crap that you don't need in your body. Instead, use beef tallow, lard, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, butter. This is not a preference, this is about removing a chronic source of inflammatory oxidized fats from your cells. 2, stabilize your blood sugar. Cut the refined carbohydrates and the sugars. Not because fat is fine and carbs are evil, but because chronic blood sugar swings are one of the primary mechanisms of that endothelial damage. That delicate layer, one cell wall thick on the inside of your veins. Prioritize protein at every meal. It stabilizes blood sugar. It preserves your muscles. It keeps you full. Think quality meat, fish, eggs, dairy if you tolerate it. Number 3, build and protect your muscle. Muscle is the most insulin sensitive tissue in the body. The more of it you have, the better your body handles glucose, the lower your baseline inflammation. Strength training is not optional at 40 plus. It's one of the most metabolic interventions available to you. And it's free. You don't even need a gym. You just need body weight or body weight work, walking with purpose, carrying heavy things. Start where you are. Number 4, sleep. It's a non-negotiable because it is. Chronic poor sleep elevates cortisol, raises inflammation, disrupts blood sugar, and directly affects how your liver manages cholesterol. 7 to 9 hours, dark, cool room, phone off. Number 5, manage the stress response, not just the stressor. You can't always remove what's causing the stress, but you can change how your body responds to it. Deep breathing, daily walking, light, reducing the constant low-level cortisol drip of social media and news. These are not wellness cliches. They are measurable physiological interventions. And number 6, ask for better testing. Ask your doctor for fasting insulin and triglycerides, HDL, CRP, C-reactive protein, homocysteine, and if you're concerned about cardiovascular risk specifically, a coronary artery calcium score. It's the most accurate test. These markers will give you a far better picture of what's actually happening in your body than just a total cholesterol number alone. Chapter 8, a word about Dr. Zoe Harcombe. So you've probably heard me mention Dr. Zoe Harcombe before. You may well be familiar with her work. She's a researcher and author. She studied at Cambridge University, and in my view, she is the most rigorous, clear-eyed, and frankly hilarious critic of the cholesterol theory of heart disease working today. She calls the evidence base for statins embarrassingly weak, and she can back that up with data in a way that makes most cardiology departments look like they've been doing arts and crafts. I have an interview with Dr. Harcombe coming very soon on this channel, and if you thought today was illuminating, wait till you hear her break it down. She goes into the clinical trial data in a way that I think is going to absolutely change how a lot of you think about risk, about evidence, and about who gets to decide what's good for you. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. It's going to be really good. So, quick recap, pub-ready version. Cholesterol is a nutrient. Your body makes it because it desperately needs it. LDL and HDL are delivery vehicles, not villains. Oxidation is the real problem, and it's caused by seed oils and sugar and stress and poor sleep. The Framingham study's own director acknowledged their data didn't support the fat cholesterol heart disease theory. Statins were tested on men, and yet they were prescribed to women, and the evidence for primary prevention in women is at best deeply underwhelming. And chasing the lowest possible cholesterol number is not a health strategy. It's a target on a spreadsheet. Your body is not broken. It's trying to protect you. Give it the raw materials it needs. That's your real food, real sleep, real movement, lowering your stress, real sunlight. Stop dismantling the systems that it built to keep you alive. Here's the ball then. Go and get it. If this helped you, please share it with one person that you think needs to hear it. That might be a friend who's just been prescribed statins, or someone that's been on them for years, or it might be your mum, it might be you from 5 years ago. Drop your questions in the comments. I read them all and I answer as many of them as I can. And if you want to work through this properly with support, my 6-month Sweet Enough program has a few spaces open. The link is down below for a free discovery call. Go and get the ball. Nourish, don't punish. Take care of yourselves. If you enjoyed this one, you might love one of these two next. And meantime, from quite a mild Andorra. Got some snow still, but it's certainly spring is coming. I'll see you next time. Cheerio for now. Mikey, go and get the ball. Go and get the ball.